Hello everybody, Neckwell here, and I'm bringing you another G-code quick reference video for Fanuc Mills. Of course, being a lot of machines share these commands, so it'll probably apply to a lot of machines in general. So today we are going to be talking about G4. Uh, it is not a very commonly used command, but what it is it's the dwell command. Uh, so essentially what it does is when you call it up, you can specify an amount of time that you want the machine to sit still, essentially. Now this can either be in milliseconds or it can be in seconds. So I'll go ahead and give you a couple examples. So there's three different formats that you can put the G4 in. You can specify an X. Now, in this case, it does not actually specify the axis. It's just the letter that they're using for this specific parameter. So G4X 4.0, that means that I want, from the last command to the next command, I want the machine to wait for 4 seconds. Now, if I had just put a 4 here, it's going to go to the smallest increment of time that machine can handle, typically milliseconds. So that'd be 4 milliseconds, and if I wanted to specify that I wanted to stop it for 4 seconds, I would have to put 3 zeros after that because there's 4,000 milliseconds in 4 seconds. But in this case, it's much easier to just do that. Now the next most common one is G4. P. And then you have to specify your answer in milliseconds, though, because that's just the way that this one is. You can specify either an X, where you can just put a point after it and it specifies the seconds, but when it comes to P, you have to specify a number in milliseconds. So, what if I wanted to be for half a second? I'd put P500. That means it would dwell for about half a second. So that should be really easy to remember. There is one more form of G4, but since this is mostly a mill tutorial, we're not going to go over it a whole bunch. But this could be another way of doing it as well. On lathes only, you can put a U, and that is just another letter that they use to tell the machine that that's how long you want it to wait in seconds. But we're not gonna worry about that because that's for lathes, and this is mostly for mills right now. Because mills and lathes do not share the same codes. They have the same, codes as in like G1, G2, G3, G4, G5. Not G5, but G9, G50, all that stuff. But they change meaning depending on what machine you're dealing with. And for mills, typically they all stay the same, which is why I'm starting out with mills, because every single lathe is a special snowflake. And when I do any lathe tutorials down the road, that will most likely be for specific controls or brands of controls, because every brand has a different way of doing it. So, anyways, these are the two ways that you can have set up on a mill for G4. The biggest difference between these two is that you can use this at any point on all machines. These work on all machines. That's what I need. That's what I need to point out real quick. Whereas the G4U, that only works on lathes. It won't work on a mill. But this G4X4 will work just fine on a lathe, and it'll work on a mill, and it'll probably work on an EDM and a few other kind of machines as well. So next would be, it's important to note that this one right here cannot be used in a cycle. So this can't be used in a cycle right here. So we'll just write that down here. Can't be used in a cycle. Whoops. And then this one cannot be used, or it can be used in a cycle. I'll explain kind of what a cycle is just real quick. A cycle is kind of like a closed process. So there's certain G codes that you start, like a drilling command, where you all you need to do is you specify the command, the G number for that drill cycle, and then a few parameters, and it will drill a hole. You know, you'll give it something like a pecking distance, how far it goes down each peck, if it whether or not it retracts all the way to the top of the part, or if it just retracts a little bit to create that quick peck motion, stuff like that. It's kind of like a preset program that runs, and it can't be stopped, which is why it's a fixed cycle. It will go until you either hit the feed hold, the e-stop, or something like that. But typically, if you stop in the middle of a fixed cycle, you have to home out the machine and you need to cancel that command using what we call a G80, which is a cancel canned cycle command. And canned and fixed are essentially the same thing. You'll normally hear them as canned cycles. They're also called fixed cycles. They could just be called cycles as well. But that's kind of what a cycle is. It's just it's a process chain that can be activated by a specific command. So, but of course, we're gonna go into that later. There's 99 G codes that we need to cover, and we're on 4. So, uh, so that's pretty much the basics here. I'll go ahead and throw in an example, and then that should be the end of this quick reference. So let's just say I wanted to move to G1. Well, let's just say I started out at G1X0 with a feed rate of 5 inches a minute, as always. And then when we gets there, we wanted to wait for 4 seconds. You know, we could have several reasons for this. Typically, you only use dwell for drilling cycles to get a nice finish on the bottom of a hole, because it'll sit there and it'll cut off any of the extra bits that happen to be sitting in there, where if you didn't have a dwell, it'll stop kind of mid-cut, and it might fold a burr over, and then you'll notice that the bottom of the hole doesn't look as good as it could. So the dwell typically is just used to get good service finishes on the bottom of holes. But you know, that's you can use dwell for other stuff. So we'll just go ahead and put a dwell command here. We want it to wait for 5 seconds. Now remember, this right here, this is my x-axis. This is not. This is just denoting. This is just a placeholder, essentially, just telling me, oh yeah, x is the amount of seconds for this command, and we're gonna wait 5 seconds. But I guess just to make it less confusing for you guys, I'll use a P number, so that way you can kind of differentiate. And if we want it to hold for 5 seconds, that will be 5 times 1,000, because this is in milliseconds for the P variable. So we'll go ahead and put G4 P5000, and it will halt for 5 seconds. And then it will move on to, you know, whatever else it's going to, you know, X11 or something, you know. And that'll still move at X 5 inches and down. Now, something I forgot to mention is you don't need this. Why? That doesn't make any sense. Well, you can't just specify an X. Absolutely you can, because these codes right here, the last codes that I have been talking to you about, have been modal. And modal is like flipping a switch, you know. It's either on or it's off. And it doesn't automatically turn off as soon as you stop using the command. So, for example, I'm just going to go over here, and this is not really this tutorial was supposed to be about G4, but now I want to explain modal commands real quick. So if I go to X2 using a G1, say right after that I want to move to Y. I want to move to Y2. I don't have to put a G1 because G1 is already on. I flipped the switch. It's on now. And that's what makes it modal, because it's a mode, it's either on or it's off. So if I want to move to Y, all I have to do is specify that. But as soon as I want to do something a little bit different, it's going to switch the mode. So say I want to rapid over to X10, I have to put a G0 there. It's not just going to know that I want to rapid. So these are just they're light switches. You turn them on, you turn them off. Well, they don't turn off. They turn on, and then they get turned off when you call another modal command. So in this case, now everything after this is going to be in rapid. While everything after this is in this feed rate, because it's a G1, all of this is going to move according to that feed rate, but now it's in G0. So everything after, like here and down, until I call G1 again, or G2 or G3 or any other modal command, it will stay in rapid mode. So I can move to, Y 4 inches, X 6 inches, and I'll do all of this in rapid until I switch back to G1 and say I just wanted to bring the machine back to center, at 10 inches a minute. Then, so it's going to do this at 5 inches a minute. It's going to move to X +2, Y +2, and then it's like, oh, okay, so now I'm going to do it as fast as I can. So now I'm going to move to X +10, Y +4, X +6, so it's going to move back, and then G1, X0, Y0, F10, it's now going to switch out of rapid back into G1. It's going to pull this feed rate, and it's going to move towards these coordinates at 10 inches a minute. So that's just kind of a quick overview of modals. So I guess this has kind of been a combination tutorial for you guys. So anyways, I think that's all I have to cover about dwell. It's a pretty simple command. It is worth noting, though, that this G4, just because it has a G in front of it, does not mean it's a modal command. G4 here is not modal. It will only activate for that one. So we'll go back to this real quick. So G1, X0, 5 inches, it's going to move to X0 at 5 inches a minute. And then when it gets there, it's going to wait for 4 seconds. And then, because this is non-modal, it didn't shut off this. So I don't need to specify the G1 or the feed rate again if I want it to move to the other, to this coordinate right here at 5 inches a minute. It's just going to go here, it's going to wait 5 seconds, and it's going to be like, okay, we're still in G1, so let's just go ahead and go to X11 at 5 inches a minute. So that probably should cover everything today. If you guys have any questions, of course, leave them in the comments. I'll try to get back to you. I'm not sure what we are going to be learning next. G9. Yeah, we're going to be learning about G9 and I think just G9. Yeah. All right. So that should be everything. All right. Well, thank you everyone for watching, and I'll see you next time.